Hello, welcome to a new edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where today we're going to take a look at this beautiful looking puzzle. Stunning symmetry of the digits here. This has been created by Arvid Baar, and Arvid is a big friend of the German puzzle community. And Arvid's puzzle, this classic Sudoku, appeared in the World Sudoku Grand Prix a few days ago in Germany. And it was attempted actually on screen by a number of the world's best and fastest Sudoku solvers. So we actually have some data for how quickly they did this, and I will be able to show you some footage at the end of Bastian vial-jaime solving this puzzle. He completed the puzzle in, let me check my notes, 2 minutes 26 seconds, 2 minutes 26.849 seconds actually, for those of you who are, wanting to pip him at the post in terms of the fractions of a second, which is, I'm guessing, a staggering time. I mean, I've not tried the puzzle yet, but I can also tell you that Kota Morinishi, who must be one of the top 2 or 3 solvers of Sudoku in the world, didn't solve the puzzle very quickly. It took him a few more minutes, and he actually had to guess on this puzzle. At least that's what I think he was doing based off his notation. Now, just a quick warning that the video quality of the solving at the end is going to be it's not the best because it's taken from a web stream, but I've done my best to make sure it's as good as possible. And I think it just gives you a flavour for how these very top solvers go about solving and how fast their hand moves, how fast the speed of thought is. And I think it's interesting, so I'm going to include it in the video. Now, if you do want to try the puzzle, just click on the link under the video. That'll take you to our website and you'll be able to have a go. And I really recommend, as I did yesterday, that with these puzzles where we do have this amazing insight into the minds of the very best in the world, it's definitely worth having a go first so you can get a feel for where you stand in the pecking order. So anything else to mention? I don't think so. With that, let's give it a go. Now, well, I can write a 1 in there. Let's do that. That's these ones interacting. Pencil mark some 1s down the right hand side now. Pencil mark 1s on the left hand side. So 1 in one of those 3 squares, but I want to really restrict my pencil marking to just one of 2 positions in 3x3 blocks, so I'm not going to notate that. 2s, you can see there's only 2 2s in the grid. Let's try 3s, there are more of those. 3s into one of these squares. No, I'm not going to be able to do anything with 3s. There's only 1 4 in the grid. 5s. I can put a 5 in. Look, those 5s interact, and that gives me a digit. And a couple of pencil marks at the top. And I'm not sure it gives me anything else. Not sure, no. 6s. Let's look at 6s. Yes, okay. I can pencil mark some 6s down at the bottom here because of this 6 and this 6. Oh, okay. I'm not seeing anything. Not seeing anything else there. The 7s are very offset. Can't see anything there. 8s. Look, there's an 8 in one of those 2 squares because of these 8s. 8 in one of these 3 squares. Well, I'm hoping we're going to get something. Yes, we are going to get something from the 9s. Otherwise, I was really going to be stuck immediately. Oops. That's going to have to be a 9 because of these 9s here. Now we've got an 8-9 pair in this bottom left 3x3. You can see these 9s and 8s now interacting. Let's just finish off the 9s though. Okay, right. And we've got some more 9s here. Must be a 9 in one of those 2 squares. But let's come back and look at these 9s now. You can see that we've managed to isolate 9s in 2 different 3x3 blocks into the same rows of the grid. So row 7 and row 8. So we know in the finished grid there's either going to be a 9 here and a 9 here, Or the only other thing that could exist is there's a 9 here and a 9 here. Either way, there can be no more 9s in rows 7 and 8, so in particular there can't be any 9s in those squares. So the 9 in row 9 is going to have to be in one of these two positions, and there's a 9 here. So that's a good reason for using these pencil marks. It really speeds up being able to spot this sort of pattern. Now this can't be a 9 anymore, that's a 9 there. And indeed you'll see, I think it's just about visible when we look at the solve later on, that there's clearly pencil marking going on. It's hard to tell whether they're pencil marking cells that can only contain 2 digits or whether they're using so-called Snyder notation, which is what this is, where we're pencil marking into 3x3 blocks where a number can only go into 2 positions within the 3x3 blocks. But they're clearly using pencil marks. There's certainly no element of sort of Rain Man to this, where they're just able to look at the grid and go, the answer is sort of 2, 1, 9, 6, 8, 4, etc. Right, now, so we've got this, I've got this, let me just concentrate on this for a moment. Yes, okay, so now this 3 becomes more powerful, doesn't it? Because now there can't be 3s in any of those positions in this bottom left block, so there must be a 3 in one of those squares, and that means that square must be a 3 because of this 3. And now this square must be a 3 because of this 3. Ooh, rather lovely. Okay, so now look at that. We've now managed to isolate a 3 into the same 2 cells that we've got pencil marked 9s. So again, that's another reason to use these pencil marks. This tells us that this square can no longer be a 6, because the implication of the pencil mark would be if I put a 6 into this square would have to be a 3 and a 9 at the same time. And Sudoku doesn't have features of Schrödinger's cat, so that's not possible, so this is not a 6. That means this is a 6, and this is a 3-9 pair. Let's make a note of that. That's going to give us some 6s at the top now, in one of those squares. And this square now, look, we've got 6s here. This square can't be a 6, so that square must be a 6. And now one of these 2 squares is a 6 because of these 6s. And, okay. 2s, look, these 2s here, oh, this is great. It's a beautiful puzzle so far. So now these 2s get the same thing going on here that we had going on here. We've now got 2s and 1s locked into the same 2 cells, so there's no way this can be a 3 anymore. This must be the 3. And that might mean, let's just see. Yeah, okay, so now if we look at this 3 and this 3 interacting, there must be 3s in one of those 2 squares, and that's important. That's going to allow us to unwind our 3 and our 9. That unwinds our 9 and our 8. And that means this must be a 3-4 pair. I'll actually do that like that as well. And this square we're going to be able to write in. This must be a 4 now to complete the box. That locks 4s because of these 2 4s. There must be a 4 in one of those squares. Always when I get new pencil marks, by the way, I am scanning, in this case to the right. I'm looking for pencil mark 4s or situations where 4s are locked into the same rows. So this sort of X-wing pattern that we had with the 9s, I'm always on the lookout for it. Now this 8, look, that means this square is the only square that could be an 8 in this box. That means that must be a 7. This must be a 7. These 2 squares must be 4 and 8 in some order. These 2 squares must be 8s because of the interaction of these 3 8s. Okay. Sevens as well. Look, sevens are here and here. So there must be a 7 in one of those two positions. Now we've got these 7s interacting on this top left 3x3 block. So look, a 7 here. Pencil mark 7s into these. Check across. So if, for example, and in fact we do have this going on, so by checking across, I'm looking for 7s. I've actually just noticed we've got 7s here, so I can pencil mark 7s into these two squares, and it's going to illustrate exactly what I was hoping. So again, look, we've got the 7s locked into the same two rows of the grid in different 3x3 boxes. So where does a 7 go in the central 3x3? Obviously, or hopefully obviously, given the earlier logic, there cannot be 7s in any of those squares. And you can test that. If you try and put a 7 here, the implication of the pencil marks would be there would be a 7 in this square and a 7 in this square. Repeated 7s in the row. So the 7 must be in one of these squares, and look, we have a 7 there. So that means there's a 7 in one of those two squares. This puzzle's really beautiful. Over and over again we keep getting this symmetry being used. So now look at these 5s. That means there's a 5 in one of those two squares. That means this square up at the top must be a 5. Now there's a 5 in one of these two positions in this 3x3 block. That's because of these two 5s. This square. That square can only be a 1 or a 2, but I can't see how to resolve it. Let's check this column as well. 2, 6, 7. This is a 2 or a 6. This is a 2 or a 7. In the central column, 4, 5, and that's got to be a 6, because look, there's a 4 and a 5 in the row. So this square is a 6. That means this square is a 4 or a 5, and this square is a 4 or a 5. Now this 1, 7 pair is interesting, because this 4 is going to allow us to pencil mark, pencil mark 4s into those two squares. There we go. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So look at the effect of these 4s, okay, on this 3x3 block. Now, the critical thing to note is that the 4s become locked into one of these squares. Now, I'm not pencil marking it because it's not 2 squares, it's 3 squares, but the important thing to recognize here is that these yellow squares are in the same 2 rows of the grid. So again, let's look across. What do you know? 4s are appearing in the same rows over here. So this means, well, it means there's 2 ways of looking at this. Clearly, the 4 in this 3x3 block in the center must be in one of those squares. The other way of looking at it is to say there's no way on earth that square can be a 4, because if it is, there's going to have to be a 4 in this square and a 4 in this square. That's not possible. So this square is in fact a 5. That's a 4. We've got to be careful now because there's going to be a whole flurry of activity. I'm just going to pencil mark the 4, 7 pair there as well, just to make sure I keep track of it. So let's come back here. You can see this square must be a 4 now, just unwinding pencil marks. 4, 7 here. So this square must be a 2 or a 6. And this square obviously can't be a 5. Oh, whoopsie, I didn't mean to do that. I want to remove a 5. This must be 2 and 6 at the top. And there's a 6 here. So now this square must be a 6. This is a 2. So these two squares now have to be 4 and 5, don't they, I think? That's right. Let's make these 4 and 7 just to make sure that the pencil marking is clear to me when I'm looking at the grid. So this square must... now hang on, where can a 5 go in this column? 5 can't be here because of this 5, and it can't be here because of this 5. So in fact, just using the earlier pencil marks I could have resolved that, but I was being slow, which is why I am not on the stage at the World Sudoku Grand Prix, much to my irritation. There we go, so now we get 4, 8 into this square. I'm hoping that we're not too far away from a solution now. We've probably just got to spot one more thing. So let's look at this column maybe. 2, 4 and 8 to place. So this square is a 2 or an 8. And that square can be anything. 6 is highlighted here though. And 2, 6, 8 here. So this is, look at that. So yeah, okay, so we're going to be able, there's a 2 or a 6 pair here. There's an 8 here, in other words, and an 8 here. So where can we put an 8 in column, what's that, column 8 of the grid? It can only go into one square. That's that one. So once we place that, we take the position of a pencil mark 6. So we're going to get that. Look, I think everything now is suddenly going to start chaining. Look. This must be a 6, this must be a 2. Once we place this 6, look, we're taking the position of a pencil mark. So 6, 7, like that. That resolves the 7 and the 1 over on this side of the grid. Must be a 1 into one of those two squares. And there must be a 1 in one of these two squares. This can no longer be a 6, obviously. And this should be 1, 2, or 5. So this is a 2 or a 5. So 5. And some 4s. What's the last step? Let's take a look at these two squares. You can see we need 2, 5 and 8 to complete this row. So this square can only be a 5 or an 8. This square here can only be a 2, and that's gonna crack it, isn't it? So 2, 5, 1, 2, 1, 2. 8 here now. These two squares are, that's going to be a 1 in fact, just unwinding pencil marks, that forces a 7 there. 7, 4, 4, oops, 4, 3, 3 here. This should be a 5. The 4 and the 8 can now be unwound over this side. Check. And that is how to solve it. So wonderful, wonderful puzzle actually. That was beautiful. And now to show you Bastian solving it in 2 minutes 30 seconds. Okay, so here we go. Bastian, I think, is about to turn over his paper, and we are off. So you can see immediately writes the 1 in, starts to pencil mark. Now there's a bit of jitter on this this feed, so it's not a continuous stream, unfortunately. But I think we're going to get a feel for how he goes about the solve. You can see very much as we did. He's definitely focused now on the bottom of the grid where he's got an awful lot done. And now he's pausing to think. Gets the 6 in the centre. We got that as well. Took us a bit longer. And he got the 5 in this top left box as well. Now that's interesting. Now this is the tricky bit. This is the tricky bit. How long is the tricky bit? He's got a 2, 6. He's just pencil marked into this square, and he needs to spot the trick with the 4s. Now there, he's done it. He's just spotted it. So what you can see, and now he's just going to fly. And this is one of the things I think is the most impressive about these top guys, is once they get any sort of grip on the grid at all, the speed with which the numbers goes in is quite incredible. I mean, imagine if you were just copying out the solution. It wouldn't look that much different from how fast he's just writing in the numbers. phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And there, I think the stream's about to break down again. So that is how one of the world's very best solvers solved the puzzle that we tried today. I hope that that was interesting for you, and we'll be back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.